We are joined by Dewald Nolte, who's the co-founder and chief strategy officer at Intersect. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sitting with an award winner.
Wow, no, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, Heidi.
Great. I want to speak about how Intersect recently won an award that was recognized in its excellence in financial scam and fraud prevention for financial institutions. And I'm just wondering if you could share perhaps some of your examples of how you did this and some of the solutions that you came across.
No, absolutely. You know, I think it's something that we're very passionate about. The company was kind of founded when one of my co-founders' mom's bank account was emptied without her knowledge. And so that's been a mission of ours right from the start, to make sure that that doesn't, happen to anyone else. And so we've built a product that, secures bank accounts. So if you think about logging in or, doing a transfer or resetting a password, anything like that, what the system will do is make sure that you are actually who you say you are, so that it's actually the real account holder doing that and not someone trying to impersonate you. And so a recent example where, one of the reasons why we won the award is in the US, we've rolled this out to a number of banks. And there was one example which I found particularly, satisfying in the one sense, right? There was a lady that called into a bank. They were logging a case with us to say, hey, there's something strange. Can you guys help us look at this? And it's a lady that's saying like, hey, why do you guys keep calling me about, registering something on my account? And we looked at the data, and there was someone from Africa using a VPN to log in, so that it looks like it comes from the US. They had a username and password, and they were calling her. And they were trying to register their phone on their account so that they can actually clean it out. And our system was able to pick up, but this isn't legit, right? This is someone trying to impersonate. We could see that it's a scam. We could see that, where someone's logging in from versus where she's authenticating from. There's no proximity there. So we could block it. And we were blocking it 10 times. And she got frustrated because this guy from the bank was calling her 10 times in a row to try and do something, which we stopped every time. And then out of frustration, she calls the real bank to say, why do you guys keep calling me? And that's actually how, we figured out that, okay, but, this is someone trying to take over her account, but we were able to stop it. She her account is protected. And that's pretty much what the system does, make sure that no one else is actually, taking over your money and doing something with your money that they're not supposed to.
So obviously there needs to be a level of trust because, with all these new payment systems and payment options, the risk is obviously heightened.
Yes.
And how more important is it now to have these systems in place to detect, especially scams? Because I've picked up from the conversations of the last 2 days that it's not really fraud that's a problem, it's more the scamming.
So it's interesting. If you look at kind of how fraud has evolved over the last couple of decades, it's interesting just to why scams are kind of prevalent right now. If you look at kind of the 1990s to 2000s, username and password was all that was used to secure your account, right? So if I had a username and password, I could log in from anywhere in the world and actually just do anything with your account. The industry then said, okay, no, that's not good enough. We need like a possession factor, right? So that's where SMS OTP came in, right? So if you can show that you're in possession of this SIM card, right, then that's kind of like the two-factor authentication that we can put in place. Fraudsters then said, okay, well, if you're going to do that, we'll send a link to you. And you click on the link, I'll ask you username and password and the OTP. And so that's when we were born as a company, to say, okay, now we have to actually do like an out-of-band channel, so create like a second channel between the bank and the account holder directly to ask, is this what you want to do? Yes, no, right? So because you would know what you want to do. Then the fraudster said, okay, if you're going to do that, I'll just call you, right? And convince you, don't read that, I'm from the bank, we're just protecting you. And that's why the scams are actually now, because the systems were evolved enough to actually, protect against all the other kind of attacks. They've now moved to scams where they use social engineering to actually get you to say yes to these things. There's actually some evolutions even beyond that now, where they actually use these romance scams to actually, convince people to log into their own accounts and then pay somewhere that they shouldn't. And now the big one is, of course, AI. So to give an example, recently In the US, made a reservation at a restaurant. Google Assistant called the restaurant, so it's an AI bot speaking to the restaurant owner like a normal human being. They've got no idea that I never spoke to them. Made the reservation, came back and said, it's done. So that's where we're now, right? So you can actually get an AI bot to have a full conversation with someone and they have no idea that they're not talking to a bot. So that's the next wave that's coming.
And let's maybe go into how key technologies like AI are going to impact payments and what the future looks like when it comes to payments. I mean, I think AI is hectic. I mean, some of the things I'm just like, what is happening? But, it could really work in a positive way when it comes to payments. But let's speak about how AI is going to change payment systems.
Yes. So there's two sides to it, right? There's if you think about the payment ecosystem, I think for us to secure it and to make sure that it doesn't go bad, the designs and some of the frameworks that we're kind of like, as an industry starting to kind of put in place is to make sure that there's still a human that makes the final decision. So you would, for example, give your AI shopper bot a mandate to go and do something like, hey, go and get me on Expedia, or go buy something at Take a Lot for me. This is your budget, and it can go and do, right. So, but it's still a mandate that you gave, and that you can control and have the final say over. So I think from that perspective, there's a lot of opportunity there where I think the user experience can be really great. The challenge with that now from the payment side is, okay, how do you know whether it's a good or a bad bot? How do you detect that this is not a bad bot doing something that it shouldn't? And so I think that's some of the challenges, your ability to detect bad and good behavior, your ability to be able to make sure that you reach out once again to the actual account holder. So some of the technology that we already have in place becomes super important to make sure that when these AI bots are doing something, that there's always an account holder that has the final say to say, yes, this is within the scope of what I wanted the AI bot or shopper to do, and this is this is what I want. So you can have different kinds of interactions with these AI shoppers. One could be something very specific like, hey, go and get these these itinerary items for me, and I check at the end and say yes. Or it could be, go get me, here's a budget for you, go and find something like a trip, right? Get me the most economical trip between these dates. And then that's more of it's not like an actual shopping list, it's more of a mandate that you're giving to the bot, right? And so I think exciting stuff, but we have to put the right frameworks in place to make sure that there's no exploits there. Otherwise, we're in for a wild ride.
Definitely. I want to ask you about what are some of the biggest barriers when moving beyond local markets, and the common traits or strategies in South African startups that basically break successfully into these international markets.
So I think if one of the most important things I would say is that South African companies that try to break out, that don't make it, there could be a couple of reasons, but the most prevalent reasons would be that your product isn't solving isn't relevant in that new market in the same way that it is. So you don't understand the problem that you're solving. So make sure that if you're going to a new market, that the problem exists. Your technology or your product is actually going to solve a real problem in that market as well. Because if the market's different, I think probably M-Pesa is one of the best examples of that. It was a perfect storm in Kenya, but we could never successfully do it in South Africa because the same problem didn't exist. And so very important to make sure that your product actually solves a problem in that new market. That's the first one. The second one being, many times what happens is that startups get excited. Okay, I've got some success in one market. I want to go, I want to go big too quickly. What happens then is you spread yourself too thin, and then eventually you do a poor job across the board, because now you're trying to break into a new market while you're also still wanting to actually win your existing market. So one of the best advice probably that I've kind of gotten over the last couple of years is, before you actually go to a new market, dominate your home market first. If you're dominant and you're secure in your home market, then you've got a platform to launch into the new market. And I'll tell you this, if you want to raise funds, you want to go to a VC for funds for expansion into a new market, one of the first things that they want to see is, are you dominant in your home market? And so it also serves that purpose. Because at the end of the day, that's one of, when I go back to the spreading too thin, if you're going to expand into a new market, make sure that you're resourced for that. So get funding so that you can actually, not just do the new market as a sideshow, but that you can actually really give it a shot. And for that, typically you need growth funding. And to do that, you've got to be dominant in your home market.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks for your insights.
Awesome.
We do appreciate it, Dewald.
Thank you very much.
Great.